views and opinions expressed do not necessarily reflect those of Access Fort Wayne, the Allen County Public Library, or any other supporting groups. If you'd like to produce a show, call us at 260-421-1250.
Let me be your lighthouse so I can show you the way. Let me be your shining light, I'll keep you from drifting away. I'm the one that makes you try when...
Hello and welcome to my show. I am Patty Hunter of Patty's Page TV show. My special guest on Zoom is my favorite guest, Mr. Paul Petersen II, a former child actor, singer, author, and founder of the nonprofit organization called A Minor Consideration, which is a child actor support group. Wow.
That's true.
Can you tell we interviewed you several years ago. Can you tell my audience who have never seen you before what Minor Consideration is?
Well, all is well here on this front. You know, we've got a big group of former kid stars that are the core of A Minor Consideration that my wife and I started back in January 1990.
Wow.
When Rusty Hamer from the Danny Thomas Show committed suicide.
Oh, man.
And I try to explain to people, Rusty was a good buddy of mine. And I knew where he lived. I knew that he was unhappy.
Mm.
I went through New Orleans many times, but I never called him.
Mm.
And one Sunday morning in January, his suicide was announced on CBS radio. And I turned to my wife that morning and said, that will never happen again to a former kid star. We have to do something. And that's how A Minor Consideration began.
32 years of it.
Yes, 32 years ago. The first call I made that morning was pretty interesting.
Yeah.
I called Jay North, who was Dennis the Menace, because Jay, living over in Florida, was overweight. He had threatened violence, and he had access to guns. And when Jay answered the phone that Sunday morning, I said, Jay, Rusty Hamer just killed himself. And there was a long silence because he knew Rusty too. And I said to him, Jay, that's going to be you unless you get some help. And the first time in a more than 20-year friendship, Jay agreed to get help. The second call I made was also pretty interesting, which was calling Jeannie Russell. She played Margaret on Dennis the Menace. And Jeannie pitched right in. She was right there to help support Jay and encourage him, hold his hand when necessary. And that was the beginning of A Minor Consideration. And it grew and grew and grew.
How many people are working for you?
Well, we don't have any employees. No one gets a salary from A Minor Consideration. Right now, there are just under 1,000 former kid stars in A Minor Consideration. Now, it's interesting. They're not all super famous, like, say, Tony Dow or Patty Duke or Melissa Gilbert. Most of them had, for better or worse, a sort of a career, some very prominent careers, in the entertainment business. Our measure of what constitutes a former child star is how many years did you work as a child, not as an adult, but under the age of 18.
Mm.
That's when the laws are so specific and unique, at least here in California. When we began, people like Johnny Whitaker and all others came into the Young Performers Committee at Screen Actors Guild. And we kind of took over the committee, which was filled with stage parents and managers, not kid actors. And there's quite a difference, because the kid actors, we had 13 of us in the room on the first meeting where we were invited. And the first vote was for a chairman, and we chose Jeannie Russell, and it was 13 votes for Jeannie. And things changed dramatically within the theatrical unions. And I mean dramatically.
What a trooper.
Well,
Sorry.
all of us knew something had to be fixed. We had to do better. My most important ally was my wife, Rana,
Mhm.
who is, I love to tell people this, a show business nurse. She actually ran the medical department at CBS Radford, that's the old Republic Studios, till her retirement, 44 years.
Wow.
And a nurse in show business is responsible not just for the crew, but when babies are involved, there will be a nurse under the age of 6 months.
Mm.
So Rana had a lot of experience in going to work with infants. I'm talking babes in arms here. And over the years, Hollywood started to fudge on the rules for working infants.
Oh, that's not
And
good.
what I mean by fudging is they were working excessive hours.
Mm-mm.
They were hiring twins
Like
to,
on Bewitched.
well, they double the hours available.
Mhm.
They were hiring triplets, but more alarmingly, they were hiring premature babies, and some as little as 2 pounds.
Oh,
And Rana and her nurses in the studio first aid were very important allies at the beginning, because on this one facet of young performers, there was unanimous agreement. Importantly, not just with the kid actors, young performers, but with the adults in Screen Actors Guild and AFTRA. They knew that was wrong. We have all seen how scrawny and teeny preemies can be. And when we went to the producers with our concerns, at first they denied deliberately hiring premature babies to more carefully simulate a newborn. And we brought them the proof of very prominent shows like Chicago Hope, St. Elsewhere,
oh.
where the employment practices regarding premature babies were exposed.
Mm-mm.
And when they showed a certain reluctance to pay attention to our concerns, we contacted the press. And before you know it, there was a 5-page expose, front page above the fold,
Mhm.
and it exposed the hiring practices for infants. And 90 days later, we passed on a 90-0 vote. The governor signed what we called the preemie bill, prohibiting that
funny.
practice. Yes. Now, mind you, we're only talking California right now,
Mm-mm.
just California. And excuse me, what we were able to say is that an infant may not be hired until they are full term and full birth weight and have a signed letter from their doctor that they are eligible to work, because the old waiting period was 15 days. But now they had to be full birth weight, full term, plus 15 days. So the practice of hiring premature babies stopped cold.
How many
And it
bills
was-
have you?
It was with the cooperation of the producers associations who realized that they'd been caught. It has been our good fortune that people of decent character were, quote unquote, on the other side of the negotiating table or the political table, but they had the interests of children in their heart. And they knew we didn't come to them, we former kid stars on the committee, because we were trying to get a career or find hiring, to be actors again.
Mhm.
We were doing this for today's kids. And the support really was remarkable. But along the way, we discovered things, Patty, that were alarming and should alarm anyone who looks at the employment practices. Let me list a couple of things. Children are the property of their parents. Children belong to their parents. In law, it says, this is American common law, right out of the English common law.
Mhm.
Parents are entitled to a child's custody, income, and services. That's a pretty good description of slavery.
Slavery.
Yeah. So that's one bad thing.
Mhm.
The second thing we found in terms of economics was also alarming, because Hollywood for years had been telling people that they take wonderful care of children. In fact, they set aside money. But here was the truth, as we discovered in the early 90s.
Mhm.
The Coogan Law,
Okay.
named after Jackie Coogan, whose parents managed to spend $4.5 million Depression-era dollars and left him penniless at age 21. The Coogan Law only applied to children with long-term contracts, kids like me on the Donna Reed Show,
Mhm.
or kids like Shirley Temple under contract to MGM. It did not apply to about 95% of the work that kids do. You come in, you play your guest shot role, you're there for 3 or 4 days, and off you go.
So you don't get a penny, the parents do?
Unless you're under contract, you don't have Coogan money set aside.
Oh, brother.
Now, interestingly, during this time period, we had parents who had become very accustomed to living off the income of their children.
Mhm.
And in law, mind you, they were entitled to it unless a judge, in approving a minor's contract, established a Coogan set aside. So you would have, one young girl, Jeannie Russell, wanted to quit her role on a very popular soap opera. And when she went to her father at age 15 and said to him, I want to get off the show and go back to school with my friends, he said, well, Jeannie, you can go back to work or we can lose the house. That's how accustomed the family becomes. My friend Charlie Herbert, who's since passed away,
I'm sorry.
was the only person who worked in his family, not his mom, not his dad, not his brother, not his sister. You'll remember Charlie from a famous movie, The Fly.
Yes.
I worked with him in the movie Houseboat with Cary Grant and Sophia Loren. We've been buddies a long, long time. Mimi Gibson, the girl in Houseboat, our sister,
Right.
On her 18th birthday, when she discovered no money had been saved for her, walked out of the house and never returned.
Oh,
Now, the good part is you get a person like Jeannie Russell, I mentioned her name before, who was Margaret on Dennis the Menace.
mm-hmm.
Jeannie realized when she turned 18 that she was not going to be able to compete with Hollywood ingenues, who really are beautiful, honestly beautiful. And many of them are enormously talented. And they are certainly ambitious. And Jeannie realized she couldn't compete at that level as an actress.
Mm-hmm.
And her mother went into the other room and came back with the bank savings booklet.
Mm-hmm.
He had saved enough of Jeannie's money without a mandatory Coogan Law, so Jeannie could afford to go to medical school. And it made all the difference in the world. Because when parents are careful, when they recognize that the child's income is unique, it can be quite a bit of money.
Yeah.
And if they manage that carefully, it can set a child up for life, no matter what happens. Of course, that's not unique to show business. A good set of parents will protect you from nearly everything in sports, in music, in show business.
Yeah.
So we've had really varied experiences. Some kid actors are in very high-profile situations with adult co-stars who take care of them, like I had with Donna Reed. Some kid actors are like Ron Howard, who come from a show business family, who are aware of the pitfalls and dangers, and they take good care of them. And even when they act up, Rance Howard, Ron's dad, told a wonderful story about Ron trying to tell the family he wasn't going to go to college. And Rance and Jean said to him, "Young man, you have been telling America since you were 3 years old that you were only working to go to college. So by God, you will go to college."
If you go.
Yep. And of course, all he did was graduate at the top of his class because he's a filmmaker. He loves show business, knows how to do good things. So it's quite a wide range of experiences. We break it down as people would, frankly, with mental health issues. About a third of the people generally sail through the experience of being a young performer with no grief. In fact, they have a lot of fun, they provide a lot of entertainment, and they go on to other aspects of their life. Another third are impacted, have momentary, transient problems, and learn to cope. That's called growing up. But for about a third of the participants, bad things happen. Fame, particularly fame, is a drug, a hard drug, and it can be lethal. So now there's the rather long-winded overview of a minor consideration, which continues and will continue because, Patty, this is important for people to understand. The turnover rate among professional child actors and performers is about 20% per year. I'm talking about the children who belong to the theatrical unions, SAG, AFTRA, AGBA, Equity. They only last about 5 years.
So they grow up and then they get out of that.
Well, they either go on voluntarily or they're shoved out of the business.
Shunned.
Or they grow up and they're not cute anymore. And as my friend Tony Dow once said to me, because I asked him, he was in a position to hire performers as a director, how come he didn't hire more kid stars, child actors? And what he said stunned me. He said, "Paul, a lot of kid actors aren't very good actors. And when you think about it, you can see how careers can come to an end because they can't compete with a college-educated master's in fine arts.
Yeah.
And I grew up with some of those kinds of people, like Carl Betts, who played my father on the Donna Reed Show. He was a Carnegie Mellon grad with a master's in fine art and drama. In fact, he received the Carnegie Award with another fellow who came out of the English department named Robert Ludlum.
Oh, yeah.
They shared the Carnegie Award as the best and the brightest of their graduating class. And when you see people like that, there's an educated and substantial quality to them. The kid on the Fonz on Happy Days,
Yeah.
he
Scott.
also graduate from Yale.
Mm.
So it wasn't an accident. In any case, that's the environment.
And the Donna Reed Show, you sang My Dad.
Yes, I did. That was a wonderful experience. You know, the role model for an adolescent boy growing up on a TV show was set by Ricky Nelson.
Mm.
And remember, his family was a musical family. He was very talented. He was a pinup star for sure,
Mhm.
a teen idol. And his father, Ozzy,
Mhm.
guided him through a dangerous business very well
Oh, yeah.
and made sure his contracts were equitable and that he was paid, In that era, it was, frankly, you were lucky if you got paid. I know Shelley Fabre and I have laughed about this many times. She had a pretty big hit record in our era back in 1962, 63.
My era too.
Yeah, there you go. Her big song was Johnny Angel. You can't get a bigger hit than that.
Oh, I love it.
And when we got our first royalty statement, Shelley, who had sold about 4.5 million records, got a royalty statement that said that she owed Colpix $44,000.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, the business was very much different back in the day.
Mhm.
Well, I think I owed something like $4,000 or $5,000 after a couple hit records.
You all?
And when I went to I owed, for She Can't Find Her Keys and My Dad and what was the other one? Well, whatever, I can't remember. Anyway, when I went to our producer, my friend, Donna Reed's husband, Tony Owen, Tony was from the South Side of Chicago, and he talked like this. And when I complained to him about me owing the record company money, Tony said, "Hey, Paul, you like going out on the road and making cash money, don't you?" I said, "Well, of course I do. It's a lot of fun." And he said to me, "Don't ask."
That means you have to tour.
Well, you accept the situation that you're in. And I came to be friends with some people with very colorful backgrounds,
Mhm.
backgrounds that led them to federal prison,
Oh.
who were big players in the record business.
Mhm.
And there were all sorts of ways to disadvantage the artists. Songwriters got paid through their union. Producers got paid through very strong contracts,
Mhm.
but the artists were almost always taken advantage of, almost always.
And they did all the singing, bringing it to the audience.
Well, this is the sad part. And one of the reasons why a minor consideration has been successful, Patty.
Mhm.
People understand unfairness. Because if you rise to prominence in a particular field,
Mhm.
the fame that you create
Mhm.
outlasts the career. it outlasts your age. I know there's always a sense of melancholy when people I care about, I worked with,
Mhm.
whose work I respected 30 and 40 years later are found dead of neglect.
Oh, man.
And that ought to touch everybody. There was so many people depend on celebrities, if you will, but they don't play fair.
I know.
You know this is true. And you see it also in sports, Patty,
Hmm.
where young people sacrifice their education and in many cases their health
Yes.
in pursuit of a trophy.
And the little trophy and fame.
Yeah.
You have to
And
get
all
in-
of these administrators at the NC2A, even Little League, are handsomely compensated. And there's nothing for the kids' future, even though they may have destroyed a knee or their shoulder or blown out their elbow.
That's why they need you, kid. That's why they need you. People like
Well, we hope so. We have quite a number of athletes. Here's a quick story that this will actually chill your heart. We had several young gymnasts at the beginning
Mhm.
who joined our mission to improve the rules. And one of the challenges that went out from our member was to the United States Olympic Committee to do full medical workups on the gymnastics team. 7 very famous young girls competing for the gold in the Olympics.
Mhm.
And without naming names, this is what they found on a full-on medical study. All 7 suffered from eating disorders, anorexia or bulimia.
Oh, shoot, man.
None of the current competing athletes, female, had ever had a menstrual cycle.
That's abnormal.
Well, just look what they were doing. It was like
Okay.
survival mode for their body.
Mhm.
And in each case, they did not get compensated fairly, even though their managers, coaches, team administrators, Olympic officials, everybody else was getting compensated. And we were able to help amend some of the competition rules for young athletes.
You go.
I'm sorry?
You go, guy.
Yeah. The hours people have to understand, and it's still true today,
Mm-hmm.
a world-class athlete, no matter the age, will put in an 80-hour work week. 80 hours a week for a young
Yeah.
gymnast.
Yeah.
Oh, it's abuse.
Yes. Child
It's abuse. And you saw it come to fruition this past January
Yes,
with the Olympics in China,
I know.
where that poor young girl from the Soviet Union or from Russia
Russia.
was crushed by competition pressures. So unfair. Anyway, that seems to be our mission. Of all the things I've done in my life, I've done plenty with the books and the records and the television and the movies. Frankly, the work we've done with the minor consideration is far and away the most important work.
Well, I'm glad that we are friends.
Thank you, Patty.
We'd like to thank you, Paul Petersen, for being on our show, Patty's Page TV show.
You bet. Thank you, Patty.
You're my
Good to
brother.
see you.
Okay, good to see you. And peace be with you, and see you guys next week. Bye-bye.
Godspeed, my love, until we meet again. You're always in my heart and every dream. Don't let this time apart give in to all our fears. God will
us all.